This is James Fox with another video tutorial for QuickBooks Pro 2013. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a credit memo that's not related to any invoice. Now, to create a credit memo that's not related to any invoice, you can click on the Refunds and Credit icon on the QuickBooks homepage, or you can click on the Customers menu and then select Create Credit Memos/Refunds. Either way is going to bring you to the credit memo screen here. Now, in the previous lesson, I showed you how to create a credit memo that was related to an invoice. And when you created the credit memo, the line items were automatically added to the credit memo. In this lesson, when you create a credit memo that's not related to an invoice, no line items are added. Additionally, you must select the name of the customer in which this credit memo is for. And that's the first thing we're going to do. So for my fictional company, Joe's Landscaping, I'm going to type in the name of the customer in which this credit memo is for. Now enter the name of the items for which you are creating the credit. Now, one important reminder is that you should always determine whether or not an item is taxable or non-taxable, and you can choose that option here in the tax column. Or if the customer is tax exempt, you can change the customer tax code from taxable to non-taxable or vice versa. It just depends on whether or not your customer is tax exempt. Once you have completed entering in all of the items on the credit memo, click the Save button on the ribbon just above the credit memo. Now, after you click the Save button, you're going to see these three options. The first one is to retain as an available credit. If you choose this option, it simply means that the customer will be able to use the credit in the future. Now, the second option is to give a refund. This option will allow you to immediately write a check in the amount of the credit. And the third option is to immediately apply it to an invoice. If the customer has an outstanding invoice at the time you created the credit, you can immediately apply it to an invoice that's already in your system. Now let's choose the first option, which is to retain as an available credit, and then click OK. Now when you retain it as an available credit, if you look in the right pane in the Recent Transactions section, you'll see the credit memo listed here. Additionally, if the customer has any outstanding invoices, you'll see those listed here as well. So what we're going to do is apply the credit to one of those outstanding invoices. You can do that by clicking on any of the invoices in the Recent Transactions list, or you can go to the QuickBooks homepage, click on Create Invoices, click Find, type in the name of the customer, then click Find to locate any outstanding invoices that the customer may have. Here's a list of the outstanding invoices. I'm going to double-click the invoice that I want to apply the credit to. Then click Apply Credits in the ribbon just above the invoice. And here is the list of all of the available credits that the customer may have. Place a check mark in the box next to the credit that you want to apply to the invoice. After you have selected the credits that you want to apply, click Done. Now, if you look towards the bottom of the invoice, you'll see the total amount of $4,894.13. The next line you're going to see is Payments Applied. This is the amount that I just applied based on the credit memo that I just created. And the balance due is $4104.75. That is the amount that the customer still owes for this particular invoice. Now, the next option is to give a refund. If you choose this option, you will be able to write a check for the amount of the credit. So let's choose Give a Refund and then click OK. Now you see the Issue a Refund dialog box appear. Now the majority of the information is already filled out, which is the company name, the refund amount, and the address of the company for which you are issuing the check to. Make sure you select the correct bank account for which the check is drawn from if you have more than one bank account for your company. If you need to create a memo, you can type that information in the memo field. Now, if you are writing the check, make sure you place a check mark in the box next to be printed. Now, since the refund is going to be issued via check, make sure you select Check. Now, to write the check, go to the QuickBooks homepage and click on the Print Checks icon here. And here you're going to see a check ready to be printed in the amount of the credit that you just created. Make sure you place a check next to the check that you are about to print and verify the name of the bank account for which the check is going to be drawn from, and then click OK. And here's your Print Checks dialog box. Be sure to select the correct printer that you're going to be printing from, and then click Print. Now your checks should be printing. If your check did not print properly, place a check in the Reprint column next to the check that must be printed again, and then click OK. If all of your checks were printed properly, simply click OK. Now the last option is to apply to an invoice. If you're going to immediately apply this credit to an outstanding invoice, choose this option and then click OK. Now you're going to see a list of outstanding invoices that the customer may have in this window called Apply Credit to Invoices. To apply the credit to a particular invoice, place a check next to the invoice in which you want to apply the credit to. Now if I place a check mark next to the invoice for $4,894, the customer will simply have to pay the balance for this invoice. There's another invoice here for $421. If I select this invoice first, then $421 will be subtracted from the credit amount of $789, and the remaining credit can be used towards this invoice of $4,894. So I'm going to select that one also. So basically what I just did was I spread the credit amount over two invoices. The $421 invoice was lower than the credit amount, so this invoice will be paid off, and then I selected the $4,894 invoice, so the balance of the credit went to that invoice. And you can see here in the Amount Applied column how much went to each invoice. And the total equals the total of the credit that I created. Now I'm going to click Done and then go to invoice number 1 to show you the balance. And if I look in the right pane here, under the Recent Transactions, I'll see the invoice for $4,894.13, and I can click it to open the invoice. And if you look towards the bottom, you'll see the original total amount of $4,894. Payments applied is $368.38, and the balance due is the difference. If you look in the right pane once again, you'll see the word paid next to invoice because I applied enough of that credit to that invoice to pay it off. So if I click on the invoice link here to open this invoice, and you'll see the paid icon on this invoice because enough credit was applied to this invoice to pay off this particular invoice. And those are your three options when you create a credit memo that's not related to any invoice. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Once again, this is James Fox, and I'll see you next time.